going to introduce the board of directors. And with us today, we have Derek Summers. He's the vice chair, registered optician and elected member. Mr. Kevin Cloutier, he's optician, elected member. Mr. Omar Farouk, government appointee. Ms. Peggy Judge, she's a government appointee. Elsa Lee, elected member. Samir O'Hara, registered optician, elected member. Neda Mohammed Zadeh, a registered optician, elected member. Alicia Munyon, government appointee. Tanya Namaban, elected member. Dorina Reyes, elected member. Henry Wiersma, government appointee. And Paul Wilk, government appointee. In administration, we have Amy Stein, Deputy Registrar and General Counsel. Carolyn Robertson, Manager of Communications in the Executive Office. And dropping in later, Fiza Assad, Human Resources and Accounting Specialist. And our facilitator today is Sarah Butson, and I'm Stephen Kinsella, your chair. So we'd like to, first off, I just want to say, again, for today, we want to offer our heartfelt thanks to facilitator Sarah Butson. Sarah's been working with us since 2019 and has witnessed a lot of changes in the way we do our meetings as we move to a virtual platform during the pandemic. Unfortunately, though, Sarah will be moving on. This will be our last meeting with her. It has truly been an honor and a pleasure working with you, Sarah. So I welcome everyone now, and note that registrants can use, joining us can use this session as self-directed continuing education hours. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. And it has been such a pleasure working with the college over these last couple of years. So I will go through a couple of last reminders before we head into this meeting. Just a reminder for folks to use your virtual hand. If you have something to contribute throughout the meeting, you can do that by hitting reactions and then hitting the raise hand button. I also want to remind us of our consensus and decision-making tools. When we are seeking consensus, I'll often ask for a show of the high five. If you show us one finger, that means you do not like it. 2 or 3 mean you have some questions or concerns. A 4 means you can live with that decision. That's ultimately what we're seeking, consensus. And 5 is you love it. We will also throughout the day have some motions. And when we get to those, Stephen will read the motion, and then we'll ask for someone to first, second, and then all in favor and any opposers. So those are the key morning logistics. And with that, we will get right into the meeting materials. We're going to start by passing to Fazal Khan, the registrar and CEO, who will take over with the monitoring reports.
Fantastic. So we've got 3 monitoring reports to provide today. The reserves policy, the investment policy, and technology and cybersecurity. So I'll start with the reserves policy. And I think for most of you, you've been through this process of receiving these reports. So there's usually a 2-stage motion that's made at the end of it. So all the reports are in your package, starting with I'll just maybe list a few highlights. So with the reserves policy, our reserve fund is valued around $4.6 million currently, and split into restricted and unrestricted funds. That was presented to the board by the auditor in June 2023 when we were doing our audited financials. We're trending the end of the year with sufficient amounts to cover our 6 months operations, which is about 1.5 million. In June 2023, the auditor had recommended that we move that up to 12 months of operational income to keep us in line with other similar sized industries and operations. So we are in good shape to do that. And we've got an amount equal to about 4 times the maximum award for any payments that have to be made with respect to allegations of sexual abuse by registrants. So that 4-time multiple comes out to 96,360. So far as any draws, intended uses, as of November 30th, the college has provided $2,200 in funding for therapy and counseling. for survivors of sexual abuse. And as far as investments go, we had given a little bit of an update. FISA had given an update during the budgeting that investments are being made under the guidance of a licensed investment advisor. And typically myself, the registrar, our finance and human resource specialist, and the advisor look at these funds as they're being reinvested. They're allocated over several institutions to make sure that we're balancing yield versus capital preservations, so that we've got them all insured under CDIC insurance. And our rates are ranging right now due to, unfortunately, inflation for everyone else. Our rates are quite good as far as returns, between 5.06 and 5.61%. We have not reached any levels below the 10% threshold for reserves, or the 25% set for funding of therapy. So we are in very healthy shape as far as our reserves go. So happy to take any questions, and then I can turn it back to Sarah and Steve.
Wonderful. Thanks, Fazal. So we'll open the floor to questions first. Samir and then Kevin.
I think Kevin was first.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, thanks. So just to be clear, Fazal, we are liquid, about $3 million, quick access to maintain our expenses for a year, or is part of it invested?
Yeah, we, one other thing that we do is other than GICs, we have a high interest savings account that typically has 6 months of operations there. It's yielding actually quite good rates, close to the GIC rates these days. And we have access to it immediately.
Thank you.
Okay, Samir.
Thank you, Kevin, for that question. Just a follow-up question onto that, the investment that we have it made. What term, is there any shorter term? Is it for like a year, 2-year investment that we made it?
So we typically don't go beyond a year. And we sort of have them staggered every 6 months maturing, so that we're never sort of like long-term locked out of any funds. We can always break them, but just to get the most out of the investment, we sort of ladder them that they're by stage maturing twice a year.
That's actually a great return if that's the case.
Yeah, we for 1 year GIC is excellent.
Henry.
Looks to me like the board is doing a great job keeping things in order.
You know what? The board is running it very efficiently. With the move to mostly remote meetings for all the committee meetings, and for the board meetings, one only being in person and the other 3 being in remote. I think that's definitely shaving costs. And as we talked about, we're looking at trying to reduce our rental costs by having some space sharing. So constantly looking for ways to trim. We know that the fees are a source of stress for our registrants. So I think we're in healthy shape, and we can hopefully look towards some cost savings in the future.
Okay, seeing a lot of thumbs up. Okay, so just a bit of a reiteration here. I know we've seen these monitoring reports, but a reminder that the purpose of the monitoring reports really is to have a system in place to periodically check in on each of the board's governance policies to make sure that they're achieving the desired results. So when the registrar brings forward a monitoring report on an operational boundaries policy, the board is asked 2 main questions. The first being, was the registrar's interpretation of the policy reasonable? And the second one, did the registrar comply with the policy as reasonably interpreted? The feedback that the board provides will inform the evaluation of the registrar's performance, and by consequence, the organization's performance. So I'll just begin by asking if there's any feedback or concerns related to the registrar's interpretation of the reserves policy. Seeing shaking heads and didn't hear any in the early comments. Henry?
Only feedback I can give is excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
Seeing some supportive thumbs up. Were there any steps taken that anyone was not comfortable with? Okay. So with that, we will do a high five for consensus on this item. Okay, that looks like everyone. So with that, Stephen, we will throw to you for 2 motions.
Thanks, Sarah. And the first motion is that the board approved that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover?
Samir.
Samir? Seconder?
Tanya?
Tanya? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing. Anyone abstaining? And that motion, first motion carries. The second motion is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Henry? Seconder? I see Omar's hand. All in favor? Anyone in dissent? Not hearing any. Anyone abstaining? Those 2 motions carry. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on then to the investment policy monitoring report, and we will pass back to Fazal to present that report.
Perfect, thank you. So this will be a little bit of an overlap from the last report, since they're both speaking to finance. So as I had mentioned, we manage our funds with the use of a licensed investment advisor over at BMO Nesbitt Burns. They're meeting with us every 6 months as GICs come up for renewal. And again, that sort of circle and set of eyes includes myself, Amy, and Fiza, so that we've got multiple eyes and voices chiming in there. As I also said, that we are meeting the expectation of the board that we have reasonable liquidity and continued revenue through the use of sort of staged maturation dates, as well as the use of a high interest account to keep our day-to-day operations. Let's see here. So I've kind of mentioned the high yields that we're getting, and the fact that we break up the GICs into $100,000 increments so that we are availing ourselves with the CDIC insurance coverage by the government. And I think essentially that's about it. We provided audited financial statements to the board in 2023 that covered all of those investments and what they're yielding and what the amount was. So essentially, a good news story, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, so we'll open the floor to questions once again. Stephen.
Thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to, again, reiterate the comments that Henry had made. Excellent job by the board in giving direction to staff and for staff for carrying out that direction from the board. When you look around and read in the media, hear reports of other colleges and universities are all in trouble looking for money and can't pay their bills, and businesses. And we're sitting really good coming out of the pandemic, what we've gone through. And kudos for staff for carrying out our direction to you. You've done an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay. Some thumbs up. So similarly, the investment policy report is a monitoring report. So once again, the purpose of that is to assess our 2 questions, looking at the purpose of the report being that it's the board's risk boundaries that the registrar is required to operate within. So we'll start with the first question to ask.
Sorry, Sarah, can I just chime in for 1 second? I just want to make one point of clarification. The majority of our funds are broken up into 100,000 increments because there's only so much we're investing with sort of our A-level banks and things like that. Where there's an amount that's higher than 100,000, it's always invested with BMO, so that we've got that backing.
Okay, thank you for that. So with that, I will ask the first question. Is there any feedback or concerns with the registrar's interpretation of the investment policy? Not seeing any, seeing some thumbs up in the reactions. Were there any steps taken that anyone was not comfortable with? Again, not hearing any. Can we do a test for consensus before moving to a motion on this piece? Okay, very good. So with that, Stephen, we will pass to you for the two motions.
Thanks, Sarah. And the first motion is that the board approve that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover?
Kevin?
Kevin, seconder?
Alicia.
Alicia, all in favor? Anyone in dissent? Not seeing or hearing any. Anyone abstaining at all? No, the motion carries. The second motion that we're looking for is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover?
Henry,
Henry, seconder?
Tanya?
Tanya? All in favor? Anyone in dissent? Not seeing any. Anyone abstaining? Not hearing or seeing any. That motion carries.
Okay, so we will now move on to the technology and cybersecurity monitoring report, and we will pass the floor back to Fazal Khan to deliver that report.
Okay, so the final monitoring report for this period is around technology and cybersecurity. So the first requirement is that we take adequate steps to make sure that we have the technology in place to make sure that the college can maintain its public protection mandate. So some of those steps include we do sort of a regular review with our IT provider. And so this year, for instance, we had a large amount of equipment coming due for sort of warranties ending. Equipment was coming on to 4 or 5 years. So we replaced quite a few pieces of equipment, mainly laptops, to make sure that they were in good shape. This was all as per or in line with budgets that we had set. Our provider, the IT provider who takes care of sort of our network and cloud and endpoint security, provides us with a proactive monthly report. So as I mentioned, in 2023, about 35% of our equipment was flagged as needing to be updated or replaced. So that has been done, and all the equipment's been onboarded. There were some small audio-visual upgrades made to the college's boardroom to enhance our ability to do hybrid meetings. So we're keeping up to date with our equipment that's on site. As far as the other requirement, reviewing college's data and technology plans. We regularly review the college and data and technology plan with what's called the executive strategies of the college's IT provider. They usually suggest to us upgrades or updates to existing systems. So they identify them and discuss that with us. This could include new software programs, adding extra layers of cybersecurity. So we have that discussion at least once a year, and it's almost sort of like a technology audit that they do with us. So we typically are known by our provider has given us actually kudos for keeping up to date with all of our cybersecurity compared to most organizations. So we are in quite a good shape as far as the protection of our data and technology structure. As far as taking reasonable steps to safeguard the college's technology and infrastructure, we have college doing training regularly, especially this year. We did a lot around cybersecurity threats, and we're doing sort of random tests during the year, sending out things like phishing emails, just to make sure that people weren't opening things mistakenly. Documents are backed up to shared folders rather than stored on local machines, so that if there's any loss of equipment or anything, the information is not lost. As I said, the IT provider is regularly testing our cybersecurity and monitoring that for any weaknesses. The college is financially protected from the impact of data loss, damage, or theft through our insurance provider. And this year it marked, I think we had made an announcement during the fall that we were moving or migrating our database to a secured cloud platform. That took place with a minimum of interruption and further safeguards our information and make sure that we have business continuity. So we are constantly moving the needle forward on making sure that our data is protected. And our technology is up to date, so there's no failures. We have redundancy and all of our equipment's under warranty. So that completes my report on that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Kevin.
Fazal, can you speak to the detailed plan as if we were to get a cyber attack or go offline, and what would be the turnaround time to have everything up and going again?
So Kevin, you were saying like if we ever have sort of a hack or something? Sorry, you've got yourself on mute.
Sorry, yes, that's correct. Like I said, some sort of cyber attack or whatnot. I'm pretty sure we have a detailed plan of how that whole process would go into effect, and how long would it be to be back online? Is there a predetermined guesstimate?
I think it really depends. Like as far as a failure goes, because we have redundant systems, we actually shouldn't experience any interruption. It would be different if we were, for instance, hacked and somebody was sort of holding our information hostage. Because we've sort of moved from hard servers in Office to cloud-based, there's very little chance of that. And then we've got because we always operate with redundancy, like it's if something failed, it'd be very quick to come back on board.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, Samir.
Thanks, Kevin, for that question. Actually, that was one question. I had a second question to that, Fazal, is how long or how many years of data can we store on cloud? Like, is there any space limitation and that around that area?
Yeah, I'd have to check back to see how far it goes. Like we adhere to sort of statutory requirements on data storage, but we technically haven't purged anything. We've not really come up against any storage maximums or any concerns like that.
Okay, sounds good.
And Netta.
Thank you, Sarah. Maybe my question, I'm not sure is going to fall in this section, but because in other reports, I didn't see any part that we're talking about the website or our presentation basically in the Google. Can I ask a question regarding on that, or?
As far as performance of our website and things like that, Netta?
Actually, the performance, I see that is better, but I saw that recently we have better interaction on the website, and we have more reviews right now in the Google review, but I didn't see any response to those comments, which one of them, even if it's not related to us, actually related to College of Optometrists. And I know that responding to the reviews and communicating with whoever is leaving those reviews is really impact us, and basically shows that how active we are responding to any kind of communication with the college. Could be website, could be phone, any kind of communication. That I think is something internal you guys manage, correct?
Yeah, so that's not really the cybersecurity issue, but more our communications strategy. So we can come back and speak to that in the communications report.
Okay, sounds good. I would remember that.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Netta.
Okay, anything else with respect to the cybersecurity issue? Okay. Not seeing any. So again, similarly, this issue was to periodically check in on the board's governance policies to make sure that they are receiving or achieving their desired results. So I will once again ask those two questions. The first one being whether the board has any feedback or concerns with the registrar's interpretation of the technology and cybersecurity policy. I'm not seeing any, some shaking heads. Were there any steps taken that anyone was not comfortable with? And again, not hearing any. So we will do a test for consensus then again before moving to a motion. Okay, I see most hands there. So we will move then, Stephen, to a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. And the first motion is that the board approve that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover?
Netta,
Netta, thank you. Seconder?
Alicia.
Alicia? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any. Anyone abstaining? Not seeing or hearing it. The motion, first motion carries. Second motion is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover? Omar?
Henry? Oh,
Henry? And Omar, can you second that? Thank you. All in favor? Anyone in dissent? Not seeing or hearing any. Anyone abstaining? Not seeing or hearing. And that motion carries. Thanks.
okay, so wonderful. So that takes us to our first break on the agenda. So I would encourage folks to mute yourselves and turn your videos off during break. And we are going to take 15 minutes now. So enjoy. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Give folks a second to return. Turn our cameras back on. I think we have most folks here. So hopefully you had an enjoyable break, had a chance to stretch your legs. We're going to move into the next part of the agenda, and I'm going to turn the floor to Amy Stein, the Deputy Registrar, to move through the life member applications. So Amy?
Oh, must be an error in our notes. Apologies, Sarah. I think we don't have any life member applications today. On my notes, we've got the next item.
Oh,
being a
sorry,
monitoring report
you're
from
right.
Alicia.
Yes, you're right. We will move to the Board Policy Development Monitoring Report, and we will have Alicia take that over. Thank you, Alicia.
No problem. Okay, hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at the report. As you can see, we've done very well. The only item that I was able to identify is on the very last section. So let me just briefly cover first what we did this year that we've completed according to our plans. We've achieved most of the items that we had originally laid out at the end of 2022. It seems that we were very front heavy, so a lot of work was done in the first half of the year. And the only item that I said that we didn't really get to are listed on item number 5 on the second last column. So there are 8 items. Some of them have been started, but not all 8 have been completed. So my recommendation would be that we put some focus areas there in 2024 and get, some of those looked at least in the first part of the year. Okay, I'm going to pause, see if there's any questions. I know it's a lot to go through, so I didn't want to go through all the individual bullets, but I will if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Alicia? Not seeing any. Oh, there we go, Samir.
Thank you, Alyssa, for preparing this report. Really, it's a great explanation there. Just wondering your rating on that. It says 3. The conclusion level of achievement, it says 3, and however you're basically mentioning there are some work need to be achieved on that area as well. So just wondering that achievement level.
So I've only joined the board in June, so I was only here for half the year. So a lot of this information was gleaned from the minutes that we've taken in the first half of the year, as well as my participation in the second half. Those items that we have were, as you could see from the dates, they were done fairly late. And so those ones, I gave us a 3. Originally, I was going to put us at a 2, but some of these have been started. And when I did this report was a month ago. So my anticipation was that we would get to some of these, but obviously we haven't. So that's why it was a 3. The ones we did complete, we did know that they would be pushed to the latter half as well. Some of them did get rescheduled originally from the first half of the year into the second half of the year. So we knew that there was some considerations for timing.
Okay, no, thank you. So my assumption is we're moving those items to the next year's
Correct.
Coming year. Okay, perfect.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions on the report? Okay. Not seeing any additional questions for you, Alicia, and not hearing any action items coming out of the report unless anyone wanted to raise any now. Okay. So this was a monitoring report, which doesn't require a motion. But maybe we can just do a fist of 5 to see that everyone feels good with the recommendations. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that, Alicia.
Okay.
Okay, so we will now move on to the next agenda item, and I will invite Stephen Kinsella, our board chair, to take us through the board monitoring reports.
Thank you. The board policy development policy 4-24 provides that the board will monitor 8 of its own board policies. These policies are monitored over a 2-year cycle. So today we'd like to ask for board members to volunteer to take responsibility for each of the 4 policies that are on deck for monitoring in 2024. These policies include delegation to the registrar, policy 3-03, that'll be due in March of 24. The governance approach policy 4-01 would be due in June 2024. The board of terms of reference policy 4-03 would be due in September of 24. And finally, the board policy development code of conduct in December of 24. So I will now ask for volunteers to complete each report. And if there's anyone who has not completed a monitoring report yet, please come forward before someone volunteers you.
Stephen, I'll take the code of conduct.
Okay.
And I see Tanya's hand.
Yeah, Tanya.
In terms of reference.
Okay.
And just be in touch with me to guide me through how to do this.
Yes, I can tell you my experience with when I did mine, staff, and I'm going to particularly point out, Amy helped me out tremendously because I am not the most computer literate person, and she was able to help me tremendously. So staff is an excellent resource to help you with any questions or anything you need. They just won't do the report for you. We have to do it, but they're there with their provide guidance and basically spoon feed you all the way along. Excellent. And thanks, Amy, for helping me. Samir?
I was thinking to take either first March or June, either or. If we have another preference for someone else, then I will take the remaining one. But I'm okay for both of them, either of them.
Okay. And it leaves one left. No other volunteers? So I have, who has it taken? I'm going down my list here. Omar, are you up for it? You're muted.
Yes, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I can take the June one then. Yeah.
Okay, so we have all 4 covered then, I take it? And the names are all recorded. And I want to thank everyone for volunteering to complete the reports. And as I say, it's not a tremendous amount of work, but it is a little in-depth, and there's some reading, and but you do get a lot out of it. As Alicia did our last one, I want to thank her for stepping up to the plate at the last and doing it. And thank you, Alicia, for doing that and helping us out. Much appreciated. And the quality of your work was very good. So thank you for stepping up to the plate. So with that, now I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. So we're going to pass the floor now to Tanya Namibian, the Chair of Quality Assurance, who's going to take us through the accreditation policy.
Morning, everyone. Oh, I guess almost afternoon, I guess. Okay, so I'm just going to start by summarizing the briefing note for everyone. So the accreditation policy outlines the process and criteria by which the committee recognizes continuing education activities as accredited. The process strives to ensure high-quality education is available for all opticians. Accreditation of an activity indicates that that the accreditation team has reviewed the material and determined it to be optician-specific and contain an acceptable amount of related content to facilitate optician engagement in the QA program. The policy was updated in 2020 to include a more rigorous review of course content to ensure the material is evidence-based, that the creator of the material relied on objective, neutral, and reliable sources, and that the primary purpose of the activity would be the advancement of professional competency and scientific knowledge, rather than being for the purpose of endorsing a specific product or brand. The committee considered feedback from CE providers and the policy and the fact that Standard 8 refraction and refraction designation have been rescinded. And then I'm just going to touch on some of the key features that the committee looked at. So one of these features was the availability to all opticians. The committee considered that this has not been consistently enforced and it would be difficult to do so. Opticians who are required to complete continuing education through their employer may be at a disadvantage as it has not been accredited. They would have to complete additional accreditation activities. It is important to remember that to receive accreditation, the activity must meet all criteria of the policy, which will ensure that it is an organized, evidence-based activity that will contribute to the advancement of professional competency. Now I'll come down to the logos. This is not written in the policy, and there is inconsistency with this. For example, all of our COO presentations are approved with a logo on every page. The committee considered that other criteria of the policy ensure that a presentation is not an advertisement for a specific product or company. And then I'm now going to just touch on the other modes of delivery. So an example of this would be a podcast. These are becoming increasingly popular and it can be a valuable resource to opticians. The committee recommends that this criteria be added to the policy around, that the criteria be added to the policy around these types of activities. The scholastic category, the committee considered that registrants completing a post-secondary program or continuing education are actively engaging in professional development and recommends adding criteria to the policy specifically related to this. And then lastly, the accreditation categories. So as the refraction standard and designation has been rescinded, there's no longer a requirement for opticians who previously held the designation to complete additional hours specific to refraction. The category definitions have been updated to include refraction content in the EG/CL category and to eliminate the EG/CL/RF category to avoid confusion. And so I will pass off to Sarah for discussion.
Thanks, Tanya. So we'll open the floor to questions and comments from the board. And I see we have a few hands. So we'll start with Rob and then go to Derek.
Thank you very much. This is very, very well done. I'm very happy. I have a few questions. How often do we review the accreditation process?
How often do we look at like how we accredit the program? I think maybe Peggy, I'm not sure if there's an actual specific timeline on that. Maybe Peggy, can you speak to that?
Yes, sorry, Tony. Yes, there is not a specific timeline around it, but we do review it, I would say, on very minimal, at the very least, every 2 years, if not sooner.
There's been a question for the last 15 years. It's like a revolving door. Have we looked at the possibility of sourcing out our accreditation, or has the committee even looked at it? I'm not suggesting we should or shouldn't, but perhaps we should look at it every couple of years to see if what we're doing is perhaps the best for us.
Yeah, so I know that it was reviewed in the past and that it was determined that the QA would consider to review it. But Peggy, we can bring this to QA for discussion in the coming year.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Sorry, Tanya, were you going to add to that?
No, I'm as long as Rob's satisfied with that answer, and I think it's certainly something we can discuss further at the committee level.
Yeah, it's a committee discussion, and it should be had periodically. I don't know how often that period should be, but
sure. Okay. So we'll go to Derek next and then Peggy.
Rob, that conversation was had probably about 3 years ago last time. I know Brian and I went down that road a little bit with the NACOR stuff back then, just to kind of give a framework for you. My question, Tanya, is in regards to the removal of the RF.
Yeah.
Given the fact that I understand that because Section 8 is pulled out, it makes sense to remove it. But given the fact that we're now have refracting in the schools and we're looking at not necessarily a scope change yet, or hopefully at one point, but is it something we should leave in there for those who do decide to practice as a refractionist at any point, just to make sure that they're keeping those skills up?
Yeah, I think basically it was just kind of like a swap, Derek. So I get where maybe the confusion is. We brought over like the key factors that were in that EGCLRF category. I think it was just a change to help avoid kind of confusion from anyone now that there's not the refraction designation. I think it was just to eliminate confusion, but all of those points, so anything that was to do with refraction is still covered in the EGCL category.
Follow-up question, unrelated, but sort of related.
Okay.
So I've served for several years on QA, and I've actually served on some of the accreditation panels as well. Is there any discussion going on at the committee level in regards to kind of either separating or reviewing entry to practice level continuing education? That's a review of, basic optics. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but it's a review of the stuff we pass for our national exams, as opposed to the stuff that's actually moving things a little bit more forward.
So I'm just not sure if I understand the question. You're wondering if, I'm
wondering whether or not there is a mechanism or a conversation taking place about making sure that continuing education actually moves the profession forward instead of just reviewing the past.
I don't think we've had a specific discussion about that, Derek, kind of about what information we kind of specifically want our QA to kind of cover. I think in general, the providers send in kind of their presentations, and then you're on those panels, you review them. So I don't think we have a standard that specifies what information we're looking for.
And I'm not trying to, I'm really putting you on the spot. I don't mean to completely put you on the spot, but
yeah,
the phrasing that we use in our policy is that it's to move the profession forward. And I don't know that anecdotally, from my perspective, we're always moving the profession forward. We seem to be reviewing it a lot. We seem to be discussing kind of where it's been, but we're not always moving it forward.
Yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from. I remember that, like myself, from accreditation. I mean, it's something we could bring forward. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I mean, it can certainly be something that we bring up as a conversation.
Absolutely. That's all I'm asking, is just a conversation about it.
So I'm sure I can see Peggy diligently writing away there. So I'm sure she'll make a note of that so that we can look at it for this year.
Thank you, Tanya.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Derek. Fazelle, I just want to check in before we go to Peggy. Did you just have a comment?
Yeah, it's in follow-up to Derek's comment, actually, the first comment about the EGCLRF. I do want to flag that, to consider maybe putting a pin in that portion of the updates to this policy. There's going to be opticians that we've been encouraging to avail themselves of refraction education. And I think QA needs to actually look at as the fact that with Standard 10 and refraction is open to all opticians, we're going to start having opticians getting into refracting, and there might need to be some consideration on that base knowledge being kept up through continuing education going forward. So I do see a future use for RF. I think courses are launching even as early as this September. Seneca is launching a refractions essential program and things like that. So I think it would be a bonus to have it, and it might be confusing to remove it now and then replace it again in the future. if you're seeing more and more opticians, because we have an expectation that opticians have the skills, knowledge, and judgment to perform a task. So if they are refracting, we're expecting them to keep up their eyeglasses and contacts, but if they're now refracting, I think there would be an expectation that they keep up their continuing education in that area. So I know that QA hasn't spoken about that yet. It was some feedback that we received when we were floating rescinding refraction. There was concerns about those who are doing it, what are their expectations to continue their knowledge? And I think we'll probably have it on the agenda this year at QA.
Okay.
So just putting that out there.
Okay. Yeah, I think like our kind of look at it was more just for less confusion, but I can see how that might add to confusion. I don't know, Peggy, do you have any other feedback from any of the surveys or anything that we did?
No, the actual reason the committee decided was just to eliminate confusion, because there was confusion with registrants on who had to complete the RF. That was complete reason behind it at committee level.
Yeah, and I think we could probably communicate, like those are probably the refracting opticians who the designation has been rescinded, and I think we could make direct communication to that group of 40 that they're not required to keep up with the RFs. I'm just worried about the fact that we're probably going to be expanding the requirement for RF possibly in the future if more people are doing it. And so it would be good to kind of maintain that category rather than to shut it down.
Okay.
But I'll put a pin in myself there, get the feedback from the rest of the board, and then we can take a look at any other areas.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Fazal. So let's hear from Peggy and then Samir.
So this wasn't what I started to want to say, but I'll come back to that. When you're talking about this whole refracting and the contact lens fitting in the glasses, is it a wording issue in terms of in the wording of that document of what people need to do? I'm trying to look at Tanya's face now. Something shifted on my screen. Is it set out of contact lenses and eyeglasses, and then refraction would be a third category, or is it general for contacts and eyeglasses, and mentioning refraction then is confusing?
So there used to be a category that was specifically EL, CG, RF. So eyeglasses, contact lenses, and refraction. And there was, if you were designated as a refracting optician, you had to get at least 2 credits in this category to maintain that designation. Like that was part of your continuing education. However, now with Standard 8 being rescinded, we were just looking at kind of making it more clear, because the refracting opticians were confused. Do they still need the refracting or do they not? However, with Fazal's feedback, we can certainly leave this part of the motion out if it's something that we don't think is advantageous to moving forward. That's, I don't think, a huge issue. It wasn't something that I think the committee felt super strongly about. It was just kind of for clarity.
And going forward, are all opticians going to be learning how to do refraction as part of their education?
Yes. So there is a portion of all, and I can't remember what year, Peggy, you'll know, is it 2021? Any opticians? It was 2021? Correct. Okay, yeah. So any opticians who are graduating will have been trained in refraction as long as they graduate 2021 and moving forward. Previously, there was a group of opticians who did a specialized course in refraction. And kind of that was some time ago. Then there was this kind of big gap of when people couldn't get the refraction designation. But now, and this is on our kind of forefront at QA, Seneca is offering a refraction course so that if there's opticians who want to learn more about refraction who graduated before 2021, they could take this additional course.
So, and when people are having to complete their QA, do they have to complete in each category? Like how's that structured?
Yeah, they need 4 CE credits, 4 EG credits, and 4 PG credits, and then 4 non-accredited activities. And now, since the refraction designation has been rescinded, there's not that specification for refracting opticians.
And that's where you're trying to sort out the clarification with your wording.
Yeah,
but Fazil's saying that maybe you need to have it back in there. If people are getting educated in it, they need to keep it up.
Yeah, I think hearing the conversation
Understanding.
about this, we should probably just have a further discussion at the committee level. So maybe it seems like the feel of the board right now is to kind of discuss that further. So we can certainly take that portion out of our motion for today and just address the other parts of the policy. It seems like there's quite an appetite for that. So
Yeah, and we can do a test for that, Tanya, as well, once we've heard a couple more comments. That's helpful. Samir and then Jarina.
Oh, I had one more. I was wanting to circle back.
Okay,
to
sorry.
Tanya.
Go ahead, Peggy.
I read that whole thing last night, and I was like, I'm not an optician, and it was all a little fuzzy. And you did a really good job explaining it.
Oh, that's kudos to Peggy who helps those notes.
Well, no,
But
you're the
thank
one
you.
talking, but okay to Peggy too.
Thanks, Peggy. Okay, Samir and then Darina.
I echo what Peggy just mentioned. It's definitely a lot of work that put it through this. So it's great. Kudos to the team. I have one question, maybe a request, I guess, if it is possible to support or broader, like a stakeholder, like an optician member for our organization. Just wondering, have we connected with ICRC to find out the top concern that's brought forward by the patient and then give them education or design a CE activity based on those area. I think that would help a lot of optician member and also could reduce the ICRC work as well. Just throwing something out.
Yeah, so you're kind of saying, Samir, that it would be a good idea for the QA committee to connect with ICRC to see where the top kind of complaints or top referrals are ending up at, to like you want us to try to get continuing education that addresses those topics? Is that what
that is correct? Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, outside of us probably, and I'll let Peggy speak to this after too, outside of us probably encouraging CE providers to create presentations based off that or doing something internally, it may be a little bit of a challenge, I think, for us to, I think like outside of us preparing something, I love the idea of connecting with ICRC so that we can, see where the problems lie, but usually the CE comes to us from the providers and they choose the topics. But we can definitely put out there that, these are topics that we're noticing at a college level need more information. Does that help?
Yeah, so basically like connect with, say when you're connecting with the CE vendor or CE partners, basically ask them that, this is our three top major concern that we see throughout the industry. Organization. So just wondering, do you have any CE that could support this area? So that might help. We are not asking them specifically design something, but that gives them something to build on their own as well.
Sure. I think Peggy, maybe we'll make a note that we want to connect with ICRC and maybe just get some information on that.
Actually, I think Peggy can report on that.
Yeah.
When they're done that.
We have already connected with ICRC.
Oh, look at that.
Yes. Yeah. We had a meeting with the CE providers. We connected with ICRC, and as soon as they have their year-end statistics, then when we have our next meeting with the CE providers, we will provide that information to them.
Oh, excellent. Good point, then.
If I can jump in just really quickly as well. We did have a meeting with the CE providers where we went through a short presentation on some of the key themes that have been previously seen. So yes, that is going to be an ongoing process that we engage in to kind of let them know what's going on.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Okay, Jarina.
I'm very happy to hear that you're going to review this item on your agenda, because here's another facet of understanding of the EG, CL, and RF. Regardless of the designation, an optician could actually use RF credits based on the level of difficulty, because when an activity provider sets up to accredit their activity, they will nominate their activities as entry level, mediocre, or advanced. So I think the need for a third group of activities is still stringent and needed, whether you have rescinded legislation regarding this and then took away the designation. I think it's very important that we keep at least the format, because you can use the activities based on your choice. And I hope and wish that the committee will review this and leave it there, at least for the time being, because it's important for people to choose, to make be able to choose what they're going to learn about. And refraction is not something that was mandatory. It was nothing. For the past 20 years, people were actually absent to this phase of education. And if they are entering, at least they know what to look into. So more and more opticians will take the hat on learning again. And the benefit of them being back into school would be to actually give them credit for going back to school. So they're, I think, very intertwined. So thank you for looking into this and reviewing this part. I appreciate if you do that. On my way out anyway.
It seems like there's definitely more of a look that needs to be had at that on the point of the category. So
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Rob, you have your hand up.
And I'm old. So we used to have only two categories. We put in we recognized that one of our biggest source of complaints was customer service, customer satisfaction. That's one of the reasons why we brought in the third category. And we did talk at that time to most of the people who hold seminars so that they could. We used to want to have things about our biggest complaints, and our biggest complaint was customer service, but they didn't get a credit for it. So the providers didn't want to teach to it. So we changed that with the new category, and I've noticed that there are far more customer service orientated seminars now than there ever have been in the past. So it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think, Rob, are you referring to the PG category?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions for me?
Peggy, was that a question?
Cupid, what's PG again?
Professional growth.
Okay, any other questions at all? So why don't we do maybe 2 checks for consensus, if that works. It sounds like the first point of consensus is to maybe bring the category issue back to committee. Can we see a show of consensus for that? It looks like that's resoundingly of interest. Alicia, was that a question or a consensus vote?
It was a consensus vote. The system keeps saying that I'm putting my hand up, so.
Perfect, thank you.
So Sarah, could you,
Fazal, go ahead.
You're seeking consensus on sending the one section of the policy back?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the categories.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it looked like that was resounding consensus. And then, so why don't we look to seek consensus now before we move to a motion on approving the remaining updates. So that would be the availability of opticians, the use of logos, the other modes, and the scholastic category. I'm seeing consensus from most folks there. Okay, so I'm not sure, do you want to tweak the wording a little bit for the motion on this one?
Are you asking me, Sarah?
Kind of asking Amy, I guess, or yourself.
Yeah, why don't I propose, so I think everyone has already consented to which changes to the policy everyone is on board with. So perhaps the motion could read to approve the proposed changes to the accreditation policy as amended.
Okay, so Stephen, we will pass that to you to lead us through.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And the motion would read to approve updates to the Quality Assurance Committee's accreditation policy as amended. Do I have a mover?
I'll move, Derek.
Derek, second?
Alicia.
Alicia, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any or hearing any. Anyone abstaining? Not seeing or hearing any. And that motion carries.
Okay, wonderful. So we will now move on to the registrant fees, and I will pass the floor to Amy.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think the only thing that stands between the board and lunch is me talking about bylaws, so I will try to keep it brief. As most of you on the board are aware, if there is a need to change any fees in the bylaws, this obviously needs board approval, but it also needs to have been circulated for stakeholder feedback for at least 60 days. So there are some proposed changes that are before you today to some of the assessment fees in our bylaws, as well as to some of the miscellaneous fees that are set out. We've got a schedule of sort of administrative fees for various tasks that occur at the college. So the Finance Committee reviewed these proposed changes back in the fall and approved that they be sent out for stakeholder feedback. So they've been posted for the last couple of months to get some feedback on these proposed changes. And the proposal to amend the bylaws as well as the stakeholder feedback is before you today for your consideration. So just to give you a brief rundown of what these proposed changes are. So in Article 5 of the bylaws, we have a number of fees related to competency assessments and the fees that are associated with reviewing the documents that come in. So competency assessments and prior learning and recognition assessments, these are both done typically in a couple of different settings. A lot of the time it is related to applicants to the college, first-time applicants who were educated either outside of Canada or in Canada through a program that is not accredited. Sometimes it is related to someone seeking reinstatement. So those assessments are carried out in conjunction with NACOR, that's the National Alliance of Canadian Opticianry Regulators, our national group. And there's some proposals to change just those fees for consistency as between us and the other national regulators. So for the most part, those fees are actually coming down. There's been some efficiencies gained in that process that have meant cost savings. So the assessment fees are being proposed to be reduced from $600 to $350. But we've also done cost assessments on the time that it takes to review paper applications. So that fee is being proposed to go up from $150 to $250 to better reflect cost recovery. I'm just going to pause there because I see a hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. Question?
Just maybe it's a funny question. So we no longer issue CCALF certificates, but if a store burnt down and the certificate got lost or destroyed, that means we couldn't get another one?
That's correct. It's not a designation that's recognized by this college anymore.
Okay.
So I will then jump ahead to some of those miscellaneous fees. As Rob noted, one of the fees regarded with respect to CCLF, so that's a certified contact lens fitter. That's been listed in our schedule for a number of years now, even though that's a designation that the college doesn't give out anymore. So we're proposing just to clean up some of those fees that aren't relevant anymore. There are also an assessment that some of the fees are not reflecting actual cost recovery. And in particular, things like providing replacement decals or tax receipts or things of that nature do require staff time and attention. So some adjustments have been made to that to sort of bring those up to a standard level that reflects the time needed to respond to those requests. So then just bringing it back to, the stakeholder feedback. So there was not a very high number of respondents, but overall, there was nothing identified in the feedback that gave the executive committee pause when they were reviewing it in terms of any major issues that were identified In overall, there was a positive response to the proposal, about 73% in favor of the proposed changes. Since some of the fees in this case are going down, which is a nice thing that doesn't always happen, I think that is a positive step, and recognition that where efficiencies are gained, we are always looking at these fees and making sure they're actually still necessary and trying to keep them as low as possible. So I will stop there and turn it over to Sarah for any questions and discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Or any additional feedback or comments? Yes, Amir.
Amy, I'm sure staff and you guys have worked out very well on that, but just wondering, does that affect any of our budget revenue for the year?
So this was factored into the budget for next year, as far as I'm aware. But I know Fiza can jump in if I'm speaking incorrectly on that. We don't expect it to have any significant impact because the assessment fees the process was already being sort of worked on in conjunction with NACOR. And then the miscellaneous fees are for services that are very rarely provided. So I don't know that there's an expected impact in that respect.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, Rob.
Sorry, a little off topic. Amy, perhaps I can get the information where the college decided that the CECLF is now redundant, or the board made those decisions. And yeah, because I don't remember that ever happening. I'm a little disappointed, but I know we don't give it out anymore, but redundant is not a word that was ever brought up in my tenure.
I can't speak to that personally, Rob, but we can certainly, find that historical information for you.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. So with that, Stephen, I will pass to you for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion that we're seeking is to approve the proposed amendments to Article 5 and Schedule A of the bylaws. Do I have a mover?
Netta.
Netta, thank you. Seconder?
Henry.
Henry. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not hearing anyone abstaining? Not hearing the motion carries. Back to you, Sarah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So as Amy said, the next item on the agenda is lunch, which I'm sure will be welcome news to everyone. I just want to check in, Amy and Fizelle. I know we've got a few guest speakers in the afternoon. Do we want to keep to the agenda start time or the 1 hour lunch break?
It would be great, I think, to stick to the start time. Some of our guests are coming from the West Coast, so it's already early over there.
Okay, perfect. So then we will put up a timer, but we will come back for a 1:10 start time this afternoon. And a reminder to mute yourselves and turn your videos off during lunch. We will see you back then.
Looks
Hey,
like everyone's making their way back in, Sarah.
looks like it. Yeah, so we'll welcome everyone back from lunch. Give folks a moment to rejoin us, put their videos on. Hopefully you maybe got a chance to get out and enjoy this unseasonal 2-degree weather. If you're in Toronto, that's what we're experiencing. I'm sure it's not the same across the province, but very lovely weather we're experiencing here.
I
Okay.
apologize for giggling.
That just means I was supposed to be outside raking up wet leaves
That's it.
instead of letting them freeze to the ground.
It's
Hey,
80
Rob.
degrees sunny right now for me, so
Rob, just so you know, I got 4 centimeters of snow. Just saying.
yeah.
Okay, so I think that looks like everyone now. So we'll jump straight into the agenda. Thanks everyone for joining right at 1:10 after lunch. So I'm going to begin by passing the floor to Fazal Khan, our Registrar and CEO, who will be introducing Lisa Bannerman, who is joining us for a presentation. So Fazal, I will pass to you.
Okay, I think I'll bring Lisa in, and then
Yeah.
Hi, Lisa. All right, sound is connected. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to introduce you a little bit to the board. I think Lisa is a familiar face to most of you, but Lisa is the registrar over at the College of Opticians in British Columbia, so our counterpart at the West Coast. And British Columbia has been going through a lot of governance reform, regulatory governance reform. And it's been talked about for a couple of years, and Lisa has been keeping us up to date from time to time on what's happening. And I think it's finally coming to fruition. So lots of change happening there. And so, Lisa, thank you for joining us over there. And we're looking forward to your update as to what the landscape is going to look like in a few months.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel less like the boy who cried wolf now, that it's actually starting to come to fruition. Do you want me to share my screen for slide?
Yeah, sure.
That? I'm going to try this. I'm not sitting in my normal office space because we are in the middle of an kind of an ugly hearing, to be honest with you. Okay, let's see if this will work. So I threw some slides together.
Thank you.
That I had actually used for another presentation. So hopefully they work okay. I just got to be able to, I'm not seeing everything, sorry. Trying to work around our pictures. Here we go. Great. So yes, the College of Opticians of British Columbia will cease to exist in the near future as COBC, and opticians are going to be regulated by a new multi-profession college. So what kind of led to this was, well, number one was the Caton Report, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. I know Fazal is very aware of it. And recommendations for changes that were first recommended for the College of Dental Surgeons here in BC. And then there were also recommendations for some changes and updates to the Health Professions Act, and also other changes that would result in more efficiencies, they felt, for some of the smaller colleges in particular. That led into a kind of a white paper for consultation back in 2019 on modernization. And in that particular model, they floated a reduction in the number of regulators from, I believe, we were about 23 at the time, down to 5. So comments were provided, and in August of 2020, they came back with an updated white paper. And in that version, they changed it from 5 total regulators for health professions to 6. So they took the group that was originally proposed to be in the 5th one, and it was 11 different current regulators, and they broke it into a group of 7 and 4. So and then in 2022, the new Health Professions and Occupations Act was introduced. There's only a couple small pieces of it that are actually in force at the moment. I can talk about that a little bit more if you're at all interested later. But as part of that, the amalgamation was noted. And in the summer of 2023, the Health Professions Designation and Amalgamation Regulation went into effect. So this will be the number of colleges now. We've had a number of amalgamations over the last few years. Oral health professionals joined together. That was the dental surgeons, the dental techs, the denturists, the dental hygienists, and dental assistants. They've all already merged together into the new College of Oral Health Professionals. The nurses and midwives merged. The nurses had already done an amalgamation of their 3 different nursing professions back in 2018. So this is what we will be left with. We will go from 15 currently down to 6. And at the moment, we're just referring to the 2 new multi-profession colleges as 1 and 2 for the most part, or C7 for the college that's going to have the 7 regulators, and C4. So the college that opticians will now be part of is this grouping. So dietitians, occupational therapists, us, optometry, physical therapists, and psychologists, and the 3 different speech and hearing professional occupations.
Lisa, if I can just jump in for 1 sec, are you sharing your presentation with us right now, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You're not getting it?
Is everybody seeing it?
I
Okay,
see
good.
it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're just not seeing it.
Yeah, I've got you pinned.
Sorry, Fazal.
Yep.
So this is the grouping that we will be part of, and the other multi-profession regulator is the current colleges of naturopathic physicians, traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, massage therapy, and the chiropractors. So these are the things that we do know. We do know that the date for amalgamation is June 28th, 2024. There's been an amalgamation lead appointed by the ministry to essentially act as the board for the 2 new colleges. So decisions can be made up until such time as an official board is actually put in place. We did blueprinting and planning for all the different regulatory streams over this summer. And we've definitely determined that profession-specific input is going to be a priority, and just trying to figure out the best way to do that. And then shortly after the amalgamation in June of 2024, we will transition to the new Health Professions and Occupations Act. And I don't have specific dates on that, but it's been suggested that we should be ready by the spring of 2025 for that. Screen appears to have frozen. Okay, well, we don't know. We don't know the new name, though I actually did get an email about the new name 2 days ago. So it hasn't been officially announced yet, but what we did ask was for the ability to remove the word college from the title, because that seems to be confusing to the public and to registrants as to whether we are an educational institution or what we are exactly. We said if we can't remove the word college, could we add regulatory to it? So it was regulatory college of. Those were our 2 asks, and both have been denied. So the word college has to be in there, and they will not let us use the word regulatory college. We don't know what the organizational structure is going to look like exactly. We don't know board composition, other than it will be 50-50. And we don't know the registrar CEO yet, or what the direct impact will be on registrants, so fees, what the continuing competency program might look like. Those seem to be the main things that I'm getting asked. The registrar CEO positions have been, they were posted and it's been closed already. So they have a team that's already working on finding a new CEO. And I think that is supposed to be in place in early January. So that will help. And then they are going to recruit for board positions early in the new year as well. I can tell you that it has been, we have the work streams going for each area. So we have a work stream for registration, one for inquiry complaints, another one for quality assurance, another one for HR, and basically all of the financial pieces. And it is a ton of work. And I'm hearing from the leads for these different work streams that even though they knew it was going to be a significant amount of work, it's more work than they were anticipating originally. So just a little bit on the Health Professions and Occupations Act. As I said, most of it is not enforced yet. The only pieces that are for setting up the superintendent's office, because that is one of the major changes. So there will be a superintendent's office to oversee the regulatory colleges. And so they have enacted that so that they can set up the superintendent's office. And they have also done the same thing with the director of discipline. They are actively recruiting for both the superintendent role and the director of discipline at this time. And as I said, the transition should happen sometime in 2025, shortly after amalgamation. And in addition to all of the work for the amalgamation, which is taking up, it's basically having another full-time job. There's also the work to do, the preparation for the HPOA. And I've pretty much just stepped away from that. I've had to, same with most of my colleagues in the other small colleges going through the amalgamation. We are relying on people from the other big colleges who are not going through amalgamation to do this work for us. I guess there I'll open it up to questions. I don't know how to stop sharing. The little button is not here.
Maybe we can, I'm not sure if we can control that from our end, but we'll open the floor up to questions in the meantime. Thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. There we go.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. We're all back. I can see you again.
So I see Jarina has her hand. We'll start with Jarina.
Sure.
Thanks for coming, Lisa. It's great to see you again, as always. I would like to know if this amalgamation happens, the former colleges, will they be just set up in a form of committee, or what is your grasp?
Yeah, so for the profession-specific input, I think there's two things that are going to happen. At the moment, the governance structure, we almost have the governance structure set up. It's kind of in final stages of planning. Once that is official, or as official as it's going to be until the new board and CEO approve it, I will share that with Fazal, because a lot of work has gone into that piece. And the plan at the moment is to have committees with panels underneath. So one giant committee for all the different professions, with panels built out for each specific profession. And that, depending on the matter at hand, as an example, one that keeps coming up is what if we need to develop new practice standards or review the practice standards for a profession? So we would be able to call on a panel, set up a panel that would work on that. So it might include some optometrists, it would include opticians, it would include some members of the public, depending on what balance we decide we need. So that is where currently the profession-specific pieces will come in. Also, under the HPOA, there is a requirement for, I think it's basically referred to as like a practice advisor, or it's not quite the right word, but we are assuming that what it is going to mean for the new multi-profession college is that there will be someone on staff who is from the profession or has very strong professional knowledge. Again, maybe an optometrist that could oversee profession-specific info for both opticians and optometrists. I don't know that for sure, but someone who would be able to, speak to the professional needs within the college itself, and then get the support from the committee folks as required. Does that help with the question, Dorina?
It does, but sorry, I put my hand back again because I'd be curious to know what is the qualification of a superintendent? Who is that person? What is it, like a counselor or a professional of any?
Probably. I happen to know that my own legal counsel was recruited for that position.
Okay.
And has turned it down because she's pretty much ready to retire. But I don't know exactly what they're looking for. I actually didn't even pay any attention to the job posting, to be honest with you. It's just not been something I've been able to wrap my head around as far as all of the things going on.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll go to Stephen next.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Stephen.
How did you handle your financial assets from the college going forward?
Yeah, that has been an interesting discussion, and I can share that not everybody has been managing it the same way, and there's been some controversy around this particular piece. The amalgamation lead who has been put in place by the ministry, he's the former Deputy Attorney General, and he also works for, I believe he is the chair of the Doctors of BC. Really good guy. He ran his own law firm for a number of years, and I'm really enjoying working with him. And so one of our first initial meetings, he basically said, okay, as of today, you operate as per normal, but you are not going to make any large expenditures. You're not going to offer bonuses to staff without discussions with the entire group, related to things like a retention bonus for staff to transition into this new organization. So he basically stepped in and said, as of today, you have to run stuff through me if you're making any major changes. And that did include any of the assets that the various colleges had. So one owns their own building, their own condo. And we have various different financial reserves. And so we were asked to provide details on any major expenses that we thought we had coming up and any deficits that we were anticipating. And so that's all been documented. And now, as I'm doing my budgeting for this next year, I'm to budget for the full year, just like normal, but I am not to make any, ridiculous kind of expenditures in there. So it has been a bit challenging. And I know some of the professionals have come back and said, well, the building belongs to us. So if we have to sell the building, we should get the money back as the registrants for that. And the answer has been, no, this is everything that is in existence goes into making this new college successful and, able to function on day one and provide the services that the public expects. And so those finances all transition to the new organization.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Henry, you had your hand up, and then Samir.
Yeah, Lisa, in the big scheme of things, I presume this is all being done to save money, number one. And number two, are you happy with this whole process?
That's a loaded question for sure.
Well, the thing is, I'm thinking that, I'm looking at Fazal. I mean, if we wind up going through this kind of process, now, hopefully we're going to sit here for a year and watch BC either
Watch
go
what
up
happens
and go
out
up
here.
in flames or it'll do well, and then we'll have to look at the same thing. But to me, this is a huge administrative nightmare.
Yeah, so I guess to answer your question about, you know, am I happy about it? Well, I don't really have a choice. It is going to happen, but I'm trying to look at it from the standpoint of this has been identified as a change that ministry feels we need to make. So let's try and make the absolute best of it. Let's go through this process. It's going to be an interesting process. It has been already, and definitely a learning experience to, you know, to try and figure this out. As for the reasons, and I get asked this a lot, and in fact, working with the company that helped us do the blueprinting back in the summer, the principal from that company said to one of my colleagues and myself, if I was to go to the Ministry of Health right this second and say, why are we doing this exercise? What do you think the answer would be? Because he said, working with all of you through this, I am not seeing the benefits. So I don't really know how to answer that question. They've never said it would save money, but efficiency. So I think the idea is there will be consistency on how these 6 colleges operate, more consistent than we are currently. I know for sure I do not have the finances the way I'm set up at the moment to regulate going forward the way we are seeing regulation heading. I don't have the funds. So I would either have to double my fees for my registrants, or, you know, so it's getting to that area where it's going to be very difficult to manage as a small college. So I do see the efficiencies in that, in working together. We already collaborate very well in BC. So putting us together with most of the grouping that we already work on projects together all the time. Being able to do it under the same database, under the same staffing complement, I actually think will be good at the end of the day. I do think it's going to take a number of years for those efficiencies to start to show up, but I don't think we're going to save any money. So I would say we're going to need all the staff we've got, probably more. So I think that, you know, costs might still go up. And the fees for the group that's going into this new multi-profession college that we're part of, the fees are all over the place. So there are 2 colleges in there where their fees are down around $500. Another one where they're up around 1,000, a little over 1,000. So we don't know where are we going to land on fees? Are they going to set up a fee schedule based on risk? Are we all going to pay the same fees? So lots of questions like that too that we haven't got to yet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm going to give the last question to Samir. Go ahead, Samir.
Lisa, thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate that. My question was just around the last piece that you covered regarding the benefits to the optician member currently at the college. Are they going to pay the same fee? But I kind of gathered the answer from there, so that's good. Thank you. Another question I have is regarding the amalgamation. Was it by choice? You had to go and pick which college you wanted to unite with, or is it something that was forced on you?
Yeah, this was forced on us. When government started talking about changes, and that would have been back in 2018 when I first started here in BC. I think if we had moved at the time, we would have been able to choose who we were wanting to amalgamate with. At the time, I did have a conversation with the registrar for the speech and hearing professions, so audiology, hearing instrument practitioner, and speech language pathologist, and optometry, and myself. And we were actually making some headway on talking about doing an amalgamation of our 3 colleges. And then through some other changes in the pandemic, the conversation stopped, and we didn't get them going again before ministry had already kind of announced who they wanted. We did ask after that had been first announced if we could propose other options, and we were told no. So the groupings in a lot of ways don't make sense to most of us. We feel that if they had decided they wanted to take all the small colleges and just put us together, they should have put all 11 of us together, not this split between, between the 4 and the 7. But so no, not exactly the way I would have maybe chosen to line them up if I was doing it myself.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so with that, we want to give a big thanks to Lisa. I know I saw some comments in the chat just thanking you for bringing this experience to Ontario. So thank you, Lisa.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you're
Lisa.
welcome. I don't know whether I'll be, working with the new college or not. I'm hopeful that there will be some type of work for me. I'm hoping that there will be something to still provide that optician specific input and still be able to participate in various events across the country, keeping everybody informed of what's happening. But I just don't know for sure.
Well, good luck, Lisa, with the next chapter, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you again. And
okay.
Have a good rest of the meeting.
Thanks for making the time.
Take care, Lisa.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, so moving along, we are going to pass the floor now to Amy Stein, the Deputy Registrar, who's going to take us through a presentation on the Leger survey results. So Amy, I will pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So a little bit of context before we jump in. This college, together with all of our NACOR counterparts, are always looking at other ways to collaborate with the various stakeholders that impact the opticianry profession. And since last year, we've been working really closely with NACOR and played a very central role in organizing industry roundtables that brought together representatives of regulation, education, business, CE providers association, all to one space to try and start discussing some of the shared issues, the shared concerns, and even to possibly collaborate on shared solutions. So the first one of those was held last November in Toronto, and then a second one in Montreal this past April. So one of the questions and one of the issues that we were hearing, more than once from various stakeholders was a concern over the numbers of opticians and the sort of future, what the future holds for optical services. In particular, hearing from the business side where there's concerns over finding enough opticians to hire for their businesses, from the educators wondering about enrollment, and even to some extent we've looked at our own registration numbers over the years and wondered whether the numbers are starting to sort of flatline a bit, and if we need to be concerned about attrition due to retirement. So from a regulatory perspective, that certainly raises some things to think about. In particular, how will this impact the public? So that was one piece of information that it was difficult to sort of discuss anecdotally. And ourselves, together with our NACOR counterparts, decided that perhaps it was time to try and get some more research-based information on patient access to opticianry services across Canada. So we engaged Leger, which is a polling and market research firm, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and they have access to a database of survey takers. And we engaged them to carry out a survey of 2,000 Canadians. And this cost was shared as between ourselves and NACOR to make sure that this survey was covering not just Ontario, but across the country. And what we were really looking to gauge via this survey was, are patients having an easy time accessing opticianry services? Are they having a difficult time? If they're having a difficult time, what kinds of barriers are they facing? And we wanted to get a better understanding of what this dynamic is looking like from the patient perspective. So we don't have a lot of time on the agenda today. So today I'm going to take you through a few of the high level sort of results of this report. And we will be circulating this to all of you so you can see the full report and digest the information in it after today's meeting. So with that, let me jump in. And I'll see my screen. So just a couple of key points around, what this survey was. So as I mentioned, 2,000 Canadians were included in this, and they were all individuals who had either visited or attempted to visit an optician in the past. There was a sort of a look at the past 3-year window and then more than 3 years ago to try and get a sense of, is there any trends or a change in access or as between that period. Also taking into account the COVID-19 pandemic, which certainly impacted the way that patients are accessing care. And filters were used to identify people who were actually looking for opticianry services and maybe not people who thought that an opticianry service might have been an eye exam or something that wouldn't typically be included in that. And we can look at a little bit about the people who responded. So you'll see there was a range of genders, ages, and split up sort of proportionately across Canada, with 37% of the respondents being from Ontario. There's also a mix of education levels, employment, income level, and language spoken. And finally, marital status, ethnicity, and whether or not people had children in their household. So again, when Leger engages in these surveys, they look to get a representative cross-section, and they compare these averages to other national averages to make sure that's the case. So a few key findings of the survey. One of the things that stood out when we were reviewing the results was that across Canada, 82% indicated that they found it easy or very easy to access opticianry services in the past 3 years. And that went up to 84% if you look back more than 3 years ago. We also wanted to ask some questions around online services. And the survey found that only 6% of respondents preferred to access opticianry services online versus 92% who indicated a preference to do so in person. So let's look at a few, breakdowns of these facts. So starting with how easy it was to access services. As I mentioned, in the past 3 years nationwide, we had about 82% saying that it was easy to access services, and that's between either very easy or somewhat easy. And that's compared to 15% who found it difficult. It's broken down by age, income level, and whether the respondents were in urban, suburban, or rural areas, recognizing that the experience might be different depending on all of those factors. And we can dig in a little bit where we look at the breakdown by province. Ontario is very much in line with the national average at 80%. So, just below, but quite close to it, where the easiest access was reported as being in Alberta. Now, if we look at more than 3 years ago, that was at 84%. So we've seen a very slight dip in the last 3 years based on this data, but it stayed relatively consistent. And very similar to if we break that across provinces. So we also wanted to probe if people said it was easy to access services, what made it easy. And some of the key things that people related to were that the service was within their community, the opticians offered flexible hours, and then 39% indicated that they had access to group benefits or other government funding for services. And there hasn't been a huge amount of change for that. If we break it across provinces, there was relative consistency. And it's also relatively consistent to the responses from, more than 3 years ago. So for those, that 15%, that little sliver that said it was difficult to access services, we asked further what made it difficult. The key barrier that people cited in this study was that they didn't have money for opticianry services. So that was at 35% compared to only 22% who indicated that the reason it was difficult was because there were not enough opticians or optical stores available in their area. And then similar response number for the opticians' hours were not flexible enough. And again, across the provinces, there's a bit more range. I think we saw that if we break this down by region. The 35% is the national average for finances being the biggest barrier. That's about in line with Ontario. But, you know, in Quebec, that was down to 25% versus in Alberta, it was up to 58. So definitely some range there. And we also don't see very much difference if we look at the snapshot from more than 3 years ago. Same across provinces. So we also asked some questions about barriers to services. We found that 92% of respondents, if we take easy and very easy, or that they fully agree with this statement, that they did not face any language or cultural barriers. We had 91% saying they had easy access to opticianry services within a reasonable distance. 86% said that the services were readily available during convenient hours. Multiple optical stores in my area, that was 84%. Optical stores that offer a variety of products that meet their needs, and that's 82%. And only 48% indicated financial considerations as being a barrier to accessing services. So online services, another question that I think is always of interest. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we were seeing a low number of people indicating this is their preferred way of accessing services. So in terms of importance, there were 36% that said it would be important to have the ability to purchase prescription eyewear online. So that's still not under 50%. 28% felt it was important to have delivery of eyewear available to their home, and 22% thought it was important to have access to virtual appointments. And we're seeing Ontario had slightly above some of these figures, but not by a huge margin. But as we noted earlier, 92% are still saying that they prefer to access their services in store versus online. And the primary reasons why people would prefer to go online, from amongst that 12%, price and convenience are the primary factors that were indicated there. And these are among those that have access to online services. So that's my overview. I'll stop here. As I said, we will be passing this along so you have time to kind of digest the information a little bit more, but we certainly found the information to be very interesting.
Thanks for that, Amy. Any reflections, comments, questions from the board on that presentation? Dorina.
I'm sorry if I missed, you may have said it, but what is the demographic of the participants in the survey?
Sure. So we had a range of, we can look at the various criteria and you'll get all the details, but they had a breakdown of, in the survey, you'll see a breakdown of gender, age, region, everything from education, employment, marital status, ethnicity, etc. There's a breakdown of all of that. So what Leger aims to do is they aim to get a breakdown that is comparable to national averages. So that's how one of the ways that they filter respondents to the survey, to make sure they're getting a representative group of people answering based on those criteria.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Peggy.
If you had to put it into one sentence, would you conclude that there aren't enough opticians or that things are okay in Ontario?
Fazal, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, the 82% factor is sort of pointing to that I think patients are not having difficulty accessing care. I think from a employer point of view or a retailer point of view, there's an aggressive strategy opening stores, and they're feeling, I think, a retail shortage. But from a regulatory point of view, there doesn't seem to be a patient access shortage.
Okay, and Samir.
Faisal touched on that question I had, but anyway, I'm still going to ask that. We did survey patient perspective. Did we sent out any survey as for the employer perspective or educational institution perspective, why we're not having, student registering for the course and things like that? Is there any survey done around that area?
So sorry, Amy.
No, go ahead, Fazal.
Okay. So, Samir, we have since last November 22, and then in the spring of 23, sent out extensive surveys to regulators, educators, associations, and employers. So Stephen had spoken about attending the roundtable, industry roundtable. So we actually brought that group together to talk to them about what are they feeling. Schools are indicating record enrollment. Seneca, for instance, was talking about at capacity for seats. The employers definitely were saying that they were feeling sort of a gap in the number of opticians that they need. Again, large players like Specsavers coming in and aggressively opening 100+ stores is going to put a load on demand. So that's where we wanted to take a pause and find out, is this a retail phenomenon or is this a patient issue? Because that would dictate what type of involvement we have as a regulator. If there was a patient pinch going on, the ministry is very cognizant of health, human resource management, talking about nurses and doctors during the pandemic. That was a big discussion. And so we wanted to assess, is there actually an optician shortage? We do, the numbers and the information that we did gather, we are seeing a flatlining in the number of people entering the profession and the number of people exiting. So we are getting close to a national net zero growth in opticians. So, we are trying to be cognizant of all these things, as we plan even our own finances and sustainability. And it's just, baby boomers retiring, the pandemic added to that, exacerbated an acceleration in the amount of people that were retiring sooner than planned. And so, we definitely, as part of our stakeholder and system partners commitment, we've been facilitating these roundtables. And this is another piece of data that we wanted to have at the table before we sort of approach the roundtable again.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that presentation. So we'll move ahead with the agenda, and we're going to hear a next presentation from another familiar face about the overview of the recent changes at NACOR. And so, Fazal, I will let you present and open that.
Okay, so our next guest is already in the waiting room. It's Jody Dodds, Executive Director from NACOR. I'm just going to bring her in and then sort of set a bit of groundwork. Hey, Jody.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us and being on time. Appreciate that. I'm just going to give a little bit of a background as to what you'll be talking to us about today and who you are, in case some of the faces are new around the table. So Jody Dodds is the Executive Director of NACOR, and we are a member of NACOR. As we talked about during the discussion on exams yesterday, NACOR administers collaborates with all the regulators to create the entry to practice competencies, is in charge of the accreditation of educational institutions, and sets the exam for across Canada for opticians. And so I think it's timely that we're hearing from Jody. NACOR is considering sort of a revamping of their governance structure and their mission, and focusing on what services they're providing. I think if you kind of factor in what we heard from from Lisa Bannerman just a few minutes ago, with the disappearance of COBC on the horizon, NACOR originally was made up of a board of directors made up of provinces around the table. We're seeing different trends happening where possibly those seats are disappearing, that there's maybe a super regulator in place, and that's going to impact the work of NACOR and the continuity of NACOR if board of directors start disappearing. And so Jody has been putting her mind to this for the last couple of years, I would say. to sort of address or be future-proofed so that the work of NACOR can go on uninterrupted and continue to provide that support to regulators. So Jody, with all that, I will turn it over to you. I know you prepared a little presentation for us.
Perfect. Thanks, Fazelle. And thank you to everybody for having me here today. As Fazelle said, I'll try to keep my presentation fairly short. I know that you all got a briefing note prior to this, and I also know it's the afternoon of day 2, so kind of a hard spot to fill in, but I will let you know kind of where we are considering going with NACOR. So just bear with me while I get my Okay, can everyone see that? Yep, thanks. Okay. Okay, so as Fazelle talked about, we've been discussing a restructure of NACOR for about 2 years. We formally really started working on this kind of a year ago, well, in April of 2023. And we did it because of the, current trends, threats, and concerns, and ensuring our long-term financial viability. So in October of 2023, we presented a suggested restructure to the board of directors. And now we're just kind of collaborating with all of our members to get input on this proposed plan. So our overall goal is really, our main goal is to make sure that we remain workable through legislative changes that are affecting our members. But at the same time, maintaining our platform for provinces to collaborate and share information. That's a really important part of NACOR. And also ease some of the financial burden on the provincial regulators to participate at NACOR. And our proposed direction to do this is for us to become an independent service provider to ensure that we are staying financially viable, but then also able to maintain those 3 goals. So why now? We've been working under the same structure since 2004. And really, it was a structure that was familiar to us at the time. It was the basic board structure. That's what we knew. That's what all of our members knew. That's what we adopted. And really, over the past 19 years, that structure has really worked well for us. Because there was really regulation models across the country stayed relatively consistent, but that is no longer true. And we're really just right now, our current structure is just not designed to work with these changes across the country. And then in recent years, and I'm sure all of you have seen it at your board level, there's been like a significant shift in regulatory trends, increased transparency, reduction of conflict of interest, more formal governance structures. And all of this is really leaving us vulnerable with our current structure. So a little bit about NACOR, because although we're a board, it's not really the same as a regulatory board. We're not a regulator. We are incorporated under the Canada Not-for-Profit Act, and we have 10 members. So College of Opticians of Ontario is one of our members. So our 10 members are the regulatory authorities from each province. And then each of you appoint a director that gets a vote at our meetings and attends our meetings. Now, lots of you have also attended meetings as guests, but really each member officially appoints one director, and that is the person that has the voting at our meetings. And then the directors can appoint officers to our executive committee. So our chair, vice chair, and treasurer. Our officers have always been our directors, but according to our bylaws, that doesn't have to be. So what are the problems? And I know that Lisa was talking to you earlier. So amalgamation in BC is a huge problem because there will no longer be the College of Opticians of Ontario. And we really don't want to leave ourselves open to having whatever the, they land on their kind of super college name is going to be on them being who is sending a director to our meetings. And not so much for the larger provinces, but attending board meetings can be very cost prohibitive for some of the provinces. Particularly Atlantic Canada has been struggling with this for the last couple of years. It's really, they have very small numbers. PEI has 44 opticians, so that their budget comes from 44 opticians. Travel is more difficult, it's more expensive. So we don't want to lose them attending our meetings. Although they're smaller numbers, all of the Atlantic provinces, it's still really valuable that we're getting their input and their participation. So we're trying to come up with a new structure that would give provinces a better return on their investment with us. And then our current co-administration structure really leaves the provincial regulatory boards vulnerable to conflict of interest issues. So what we have suggested is that we move away from our current board structure and we move more towards a committee structure. And some of the committees that we've talked about, some of these already exist. The National Examination Committee already exists. The Registrar's Committee already exists. The Opticians Council of Canada, although it doesn't exist as a committee of NACOR, it does exist and is managed currently by NACOR. And then a Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition Committee, which, although it's not a formal committee, we do have had many meetings in the past probably 5 years dealing strictly with PLAR. We're suggesting that the executive committee maintains its current structure so that we still have a chair, vice chair, and treasurer. And then again, that we become a financial independent service provider so that we make sure that we do have our long-term financial viability. So what's the advantage of this? So it certainly allows us to continue to collaborate and share information and also remain flexible enough to accommodate any changes in legislation across the country. Members would continue to have input on the tools administered by NACOR, which is really important to both us and to you. And the committees are more specific. So instead of just having general board meetings that cover a whole range of topics, the meetings can be more specific, and we make sure that the people that are coming to the meetings are really the people that we need the input from. And NACOR's always, it's been a bit of a bit of a myth. There's a lot of decisions made at the NACOR board meeting level, but we did go back and look after the 5 years of any motions that were passed at NACOR. And really most of them related to accepting our budget, accepting dates for the national exams, setting prices for PLAR. So the decisions really are not decisions that are really affecting our members. What we really do is we get together, we discuss, we share ideas, we collaborate, we take that information back to the provinces, get input from their boards, and then come to consensus. We're much more of a consensus-based organization than we are on a strictly voting structure. So how does this affect the COO? Really, provincial input has always been at the committee level, not the board level, and this will not change with the restructure. We're, I believe anyways, you know, a currently highly effective way for provincial regulatory boards to meet, share ideas, collaborate, and make sure that our big goal is really to make sure that there's standardization across the country, and we really do not want to lose this based on legislative changes outside of our control. So the committee level, I believe, is a way to keep all of this and keep ourselves fluent. And we are certainly not the only national alliance being forced to make changes to their current structures. The amalgamation in BC has really set off quite a trend in national alliances looking at, okay, how do we need to adapt to make sure that we're, you know, still around 5 years from now and that we're getting the people that we need to participating. And then, as I said to earlier, the fact that we're incorporated as a not-for-profit really gives us flexibility to easily change our structure. And if we want to make changes to our structure, it's as simple as passing a motion at our board of directors meetings, and then approving that at our next annual general meeting. In our annual general meeting, you know, it's not like an annual general meeting where your members or your registrants and your decisions are being made at a board level. For us, it's the same people. So the same people that make a decision to change our bylaws then vote on those to approve those changes. And we can do it at the next meeting. So it's not years of waiting for government or anything to give us the ability to do that. So what are the next steps? As I said, we're working with other national alliances to get some idea on where they're going. But interestingly enough, a lot of them are really looking to us for input on this, simply because NACOR is a very, we're very streamlined and we've been an effective organization over the years. So, you know, we're a very small profession, but people have been asking us about what we're doing. We're looking for inputs from the provincial regulatory boards. And then we're looking at reviewing our terms of references and policies for our current committees, and then we will meet again in May of 2024 and come forward with the suggested draft changes for this structure rechange. So as I said, I would keep it sweet and simple. And so I'll just open up the floor and to see if anybody has any questions or concerns or anything you want to share about that.
Thanks, Jody. Any
Sarah?
questions? Any questions or comments from the board? Clarification needed. Okay, I'm not seeing any, Jody. It looks like no additional questions from from folks. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks for all the work that you do behind the scenes with all the tools and all the exams and everything. We appreciate all of that. You've been there long term for us.
Thanks, Fazelle.
Okay.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Wonderful. Thanks so much,
Bye.
Jody. Take care. Okay, so we will move on now to our registrar's report, and I'm going to invite Fazelle Khan to lead us through the registrar's report.
Okay, thank you. I will just quickly do a quick scan here. I think we've talked a lot about it, most everything. I think the big thing which we've talked about throughout the budget discussions and things like that was the impending arrival of the amendments to the registration regulation. That's been a long path over 7 or 8 years, and it brings with it some, I think, welcome changes. We've heard from our stakeholders things about the relevancy of rigid lens fit requirements that have been technically embedded forever in our regulation that now come out of regulation once this passes, and that we can support it through policy and be a bit more responsive. Down to other things that are going to come out of the regulation, including the date of our renewal close. Right now, it's prescribed in the regulation that it opens October 31st and closes December 31st. That's been a source of pain for a lot of our registrants at the year end. So we have some ability to influence that now via policy. So there's a lot of good work ahead of us, a lot of heavy lifting through policy, supporting policy, but we're going to be a lot more responsive and nimble when that regulation arrives. There's a listing of the external events that we've attended. So fall has been super busy, starting with sort of being out in Ottawa in September. It lists the different engagement opportunities that we've had with our registrants, and speaks to the exam sessions that we've had this fall. So the team has been very busy spending weekends out on the road. We've had some excellent interactions with our registrants. So I think it continues to be a worthwhile endeavor. Collaborative efforts wise, I think also I spoke to you about the fact that we'll be collaborating with the College of Optometrists on an engagement opportunity with the Indigenous community. The thought that one uniform engagement with the community rather than both professions engaging them separately. And then hopefully the output from that project will help us, both colleges, develop standards around cultural safety and humility that will be in alignment with each other. So beyond the cost sharing, I think it helps us align with our messaging more uniformly. As I also mentioned earlier on, we had the College of Respiratory Therapists visit our office and spend the day using our offices last Thursday. And we're in talks with them to see if there's interest in taking space from us on our unoccupied days to reduce our costs for premises and rentals. So we are busy constantly looking for collaboration opportunities with other regulators to bring some efficiencies and cost reductions, and also I think better outputs for patient experience, especially the Indigenous community engagement. I'm looking very forward to that in the new year. So with that, I turn it back to the board to see if there's any questions.
Any questions on the registrar's report? Stephen.
Yeah, Sarah and Fazelle, I just wanted to show the emphasis that the government puts on that particular document. The day before it was the college received it, I get a call in the morning from Amy. She said, "Steve, where are you?" I said, "At home." And she said, "I got this document for you. I got to set it up to you. So we'll make arrangements." So the next day it was couriered up. I had to sign the document in blue ink, no other colored ink from province, give it back to the courier who waited outside my door, sent it all the way back to Toronto during a snowstorm, and then back to Fazelle. He had to sign it and then get it back to the government within 2 days. So that's how quickly that particular piece of document had to go through with the government. It just shows you when they make up their mind, you got to move like 24 hours ago. So, but thanks Fazella and Amy and Fizza for organizing that for me.
And I've got to give kudos to Amy on the registration regulation. It's been a long road. It precedes her actually, but there was a lot of heavy lifting that happened when the emergency reg came out, sort of out of nowhere, and it tethers to that regulation. And when that got carved out in the summer, Amy had to make some custom changes within a week or two, and then reattach it in the fall, now tethering to the emergency class. So she did a lot of acrobatics and met all our timelines, and has gotten us to the finish line with this really long project. I think Rob can speak to its inception almost a decade ago, and now coming to a fruition, hopefully in our time.
Hopefully.
So thank you. Hopefully, yes. So thank you, Amy. And
Thank
if there's
you.
any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions for Fazal? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we can move on to the rest of the reports. And we'll actually pass to Stephen for that.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And this, the communication exams report and committee reports, they're all in the package that it was presented in your package. And this is a consent agenda item and will be approved as an omnibus bill. But before we ask for any other questions or leading towards consensus of a motion, I know Netta had a question earlier this morning and I wondered if she wanted to ask it now.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Netta, did you want to revisit that question now?
Sure, we can revisit it, but I think I got my answer somehow. And the reason why I brought that matter up is just something that it's kind of out of our control, but we definitely can have our eyes on those comments. But yeah, everything is good. Thank you.
All good.
Okay,
Thank you, Sue.
Any other questions related to any of the additional reports that were included? Any comments or feedback? Okay, I'm not seeing any, Stephen, so I believe we can move to a motion.
Okay, and the motion that we're seeking is to approve the committee reports, communications reports, and exam reports and NACOR report as presented. Do I have a mover?
See Henry?
Okay, seconder,
I can second Alicia.
Alicia. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing anyone abstaining from voting? Not hearing or seeing any, and that motion carries.
Okay, so now, Stephen, we will stay with you and move on to the next section of the agenda, which is the board and appointed member recognition.
Okay. I want to thank the board members who are leaving us, sadly. The first person that we're going to bring up is Diana Bristow. She was here, government appointee from 2019 to 2023. She was first appointed in 2019 and reappointed again in 2020 for 3 years. Through her leadership, Diana has made a significant contribution to the governance committee, first as committee chair, first committee member, and then as chair. Diana has also held the position of vice chair of quality assurance. We thank her very much for her participation in everything she did for the college. Next, moving on, is Elsa Lee. She was a member from 2021 to 2023. She first joined the college in 2021 and served 1 term as an elected board member. Elsa has contributed to all of the committees she's had the opportunity to sit on, most notably patient relations, ICRC, and governance. So we thank her very much for her participation and contributions towards the college. Next, Neda Mohammadzadeh. From 2015 to 2023, Neda was first elected in 2014 for the 2015 to 2018 term and has served 3 consecutive terms as an elected member. She's been on the college as vice chair in 2022 on the board, and she's held the position of chair of clinical practice and vice chair of patient relations. She's made a significant contribution to each committee she has participated in, including executive, patient relations, and ICRC. Thank you so much, Netta, for your dedicated service.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
And next, Dorina Reyes. From 2018 to 2023, Dorina was first elected in 2017 for the 2018 to 2020 term. She is now at the end of her 2nd term as an elected board member. She was appointed as a member in 2016 and 2017, and Dorina was a part of the Executive Committee, Governance Committee, Registration Committee, Quality Assurance Committee, and Clinical Practice. Dorina was Vice Chair of Clinical Practice and Chair of Registration. We thank you for your service, Dorina. Now for the appointed members. Dennis O'Hagan. He first joined the college in 2020 and has served 2 consecutive terms as an appointed member. He was approachable and fair. Dennis was the chair of clinical practice in 2023 and the vice chair and committee member in previous years. Dennis has held the position of vice chair of quality assurance as well as a committee member. And thank you, Dennis, for your contribution to the college. Desiree Petrolito came to the college in 22-23, and she joined as she was a vice chair and then going on to chair of governance committee. And she was also a strong contributor to other committees she sat on, including ICRC, registration, and vice chair of quality assurance. Desiree, thank you for your contributions to the college. Next, Daniela Showwater, who was here from 2018 to 2023. She first joined the college in 2018 and has served 3 consecutive terms as an appointed member. Daniela's thoughtful leadership has allowed her to succeed as vice chair of standards of practice, vice chair of registration, and vice chair of patient relations. Daniela has also held the position of vice chair of the discipline committee. Danielle made a significant contribution to each of the committees she sat on, including ICRC and standards of practice. And we thank you for your service, Daniela. And lastly, Tapiwa Yuzwi. 2022 to 2023. She first joined the college in 2022 and has served 1 term as an appointed member. Tapiwa has participated in the Quality Assurance Committee and the Governance Committee. And thank you for your service. And I want to thank everyone who was for their time on the committee. And
Steve, sorry, do you mind if I just interrupt you for a second? It looks like
Sure.
Diana entered the waiting room and might actually be here, so we could maybe
okay.
include her in these recognitions.
Sure.
So I'm just going to bring her in. So I think she'd appreciate hearing your words. Hi, Diana.
Hello.
Oh, so lovely to see you.
Hi, it's nice to see you too.
We just had your face up on screen, and Steve is actually going through the recognition. So I'm glad you could join us, and I'm going to turn it back to Steve.
Yeah. Diana, we want to thank you so much for your contributions that you made to the college over the years. As I've said before, I still remember I had just been appointed to the board just a couple of months ahead of you. And when you first came into your first meeting, you sat down beside me, and together you said, when we went to vote on something, you said, I don't know how we're going to get through this, Steve. And I said, well, together, the two of us will work at it and see how we did. And I think we both ended up doing not a bad job at it, if I do say so myself. So I want to go ahead.
I appreciated your guidance at that time.
So we want to thank you for your personality, your great smile, your intellect, and sitting. I had the wonderful session of sitting in with you on governance when it was some really dry material back in 2019 and so
Yes.
and going through that, and it was tough sledding, but I personally really appreciate you showing up and putting in your viewpoints, and you've been a great asset to the college, and I really appreciate everything that you've done, and we wish you the best in the future.
Thank you, Steve. I can't thank you enough. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working with everyone there at the college, yourself and Zell and Carolyn, the whole team. I mean, everybody's really been wonderful and supportive. Amy, I mean, I just can't thank you enough. I think it's really been the highlight of my career so far, honestly.
Good.
Nice.
Good.
Thank you. We wanted to open the floor to other outgoing members, if anyone wanted to say a couple of words as well. Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
Sorry, just hitting all the right buttons here. Hold on. So now, Mr. Kinsella, you are not leaving us, but you are vacating the position of chair, which you've held for 2 years. You've done a spectacular job. You've led, taken us out of the end of COVID. You've been a wonderful support for so many of the public and professional members here, and we've all benefited from your leadership. I know I definitely have. Working with you this last year has been spectacular, and I've learned a lot from you and how you talk to people and how you deal with the meeting settings and such, and I have big shoes to fill as I step into my new role, but I wanted to thank you for your service to us and all that you have done over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Derek. That's very much appreciated. And I know that going forward, the college is in excellent hands, and both yourself and Kevin coming on and the other new members coming on board. And this has been fun for me. When I first started, back in 2019, the province asked me, would you like to join another college? And I said, okay, sure. And they said, it's a college of opticians. And I thought, oh, great. So then my first call into Fazell, and I said, so when do I get to meet the other doctors of the of the eye profession? And because I had no idea exactly what an optician did, but now I do. I've learned that. So I was one of those people that had no idea. And I thank you. I've tried to treat everybody the way they should be treated, with respect all around. And Fazell, you have yourself an amazing team to work with on your staff. They are second to none. I do know that from other colleges around, that this college is certainly recognized as a leader in the field. They're not a follower. That's taken up with your leadership and the staff that you put in place to continue to do that. To the board that, since I've worked on from vice chair and past 2 years as chair, I've given specific direction to the staff to carry things out financially, whatever. And I myself, I want to say to the professional members on all the committees that I've sat on and ask for their advice that I've taken in with as just like a sponge. I try to learn something new every day in my life. And I've learned so much from each and every one of you. And I want to thank you, because overall, you've made me a better person. And I just feel that way about it. But Derek's right. I'm not going away. I'm just sitting on I'll still be on around and sitting on executive. And just thank everyone so much.
And I have to say, Stephen, that is truly the silver lining right there. We might be losing you as leadership right now in our position as chair, but we're getting to keep you as our resource. And with all of the politicals that you have learned and all of the technique you have, it's really reassuring to still have you here.
Thank you.
Neda.
Stephanie, you said it very well. I don't know how I can basically top up that, but it was, for me, definitely, as Diana said, the 9 years was a highlight of my career. I want to thank everyone, all the staff, board members, and I'm gonna say a special thank to Fazell, because his leadership definitely as a college, as a board, and in my, I would say, personal growth in my professional, it had a huge impact. And I know when I joined the college 2015, it was kind of a stormy time, but now I see how we passed that storm, and actually we came over, and with the help of the board members, the staff, and Fazal leadership, as Stephen said, we are one of the top colleges right now. And I would say that wouldn't be possible with the teamwork, wonderful leadership, and great relationship that we all have. And I hope, I wish all the best to all the members. I wish a great, more achievement for the college. Please, guys, keep up the great work. We are proud of all of you guys. And I wish everybody a great new year. And I'm going to miss all of you.
We will miss you, Netta.
Anyone else wanted to say anything? Jarina, I know you're also outgoing. Yeah, Jarina, go ahead.
I guess since I'm last on the list, I should say something. So first of all, I came to the college with a sense of duty, and I may have come very harsh to some of you, but I think the fairness is what trailed along my dealings. I think I would like to say that I'm proud and happy that I have participated in some of the achievements of the past few years. One of them being creating a little bit of an environment in the quality assurance that was unbiased and deemed a little bit more professional, asking activity providers to come with scientific evidence supporting their documentation, and that's something that I feel very good about it. And of course, another achievement that I participated in is while being a chair of the clinical practice, I've introduced the sunsetting. I remember how everybody was laughing at the term, particularly you, Henry. Where did you get that term out from? You said to me. Sunsetting of the, forget me now, the word sleeps. Can you help me, Fazal?
The retiring, or yeah, the rescinding.
Yes, for refraction.
Yes.
And that was something I'm very happy and interested. Like, how can I say? I think it's a beginning of something new, and I'm very happy that I was part of it. Also, I was very happy to be colleagues with a lot of my former students at Seneca, and also to know a lot of new faces that have enriched my stay at the college, and I've learned a lot from their particular experience in other fields, especially people from the staff that have law education and policy education and engineering education and so forth. I was actually always wondering about two people that were part of the correctional institution. That was David Milne, and I think Steve too was part of that policing academy or something. So they inspired me a lot. The variety of people that I've come across was enriching my stay here, and I totally didn't agree with those that came unprepared to the meetings. So just to say that. But other than that, I hope and wish that the college will take care of the unexpected consequences of sunsetting and retiring bylaws and regulations, and they will be forth creating environment for the profession to stay viable and to actually flourish, and also for all of us to be happy and proud that we have come together and we are opticians, or we have been part of the opticians' life. So with this, farewell, and I thank you again for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Any last comments before we move to a close?
Maybe if I can just say one word, a couple words, is just, my thanks to everybody that we've worked with. We've enjoyed the staff, a really supportive and wonderful relationship with all of our board members and appointed members. And we've really seen some amazing talent come into the college, to the point where we were really saddened to see people either not re-upping or running out of their 9 years. We hope that you've left all big shoes to fill, but we have really had a good run, and it's the people around the board table that and the committee tables that have made that happen. So good luck to everybody. I've seen everybody grow. Netta, your leadership, your public speaking, all of those things. Like everyone I've seen develop as leaders, and so I would say you're all leaders in your profession. So thank you for giving your time all these years.
Wonderful. Thank you, Faisal. So that adjourns our meeting. I'm going to pass the floor to Stephen just to take us through some closing items as well as a motion.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that there will be a survey sent out immediately after the meeting to complete it and get it back in as soon as possible. And for this time, I will confirm the prep time and honorarium at the closing of the meeting, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Alicia.
Alicia, seconder?
Henry?
Henry, all in favor? Anyone opposed? No one in dissent, no one abstaining. And my last motion as chair, the motion passes.
Wonderful. And then, so Stephen, if you want to do maybe prep time, and then we can move to the reflection period.